Lowell Cooven, and I'm the founder of Cooven Law, and we're a law firm that's dedicated to standing up for the rights of service employees throughout the entire state of Florida.
Lowell, here's a question from a server in Orlando who writes, in our restaurant, we never get overtime no matter how many hours we work in a week. Our boss says waiters don't have to get overtime. Is he right?
Waiters are just like other employees. They must be paid for all hours that they work each week, and that includes those hours in excess of 40 hours a week, which are overtime hours. You need to keep a log of the number of hours you work each week on your own and not just trust the restaurant's timekeeping machines.
Lowell, this is a question from a barback in Key West who writes, the restaurant I work at only pays barbacks $25 plus tips per shift. Is this allowed?
Actually, it can be allowed and it may not be allowed. It depends on how many hours you work. In Florida, you must be paid at least $4.91 per hour at a minimum when you're earning tips. So if you worked a shift that was 10 hours long, they would be breaking the law. If you worked a shift that was 5 hours long, then it would be legal. You need to keep track of all the hours that you work, and you need to multiply that times $4.91 and see if it exceeds or is below the $25 per shift that you're working to figure that out.
This is a question from a waiter in Miami Beach who writes, I work in a restaurant that makes us pay for dine and dash walkouts. Is this legal?
Paying for a walkout or a dine and dash is not normally legal, and the reason is because paying the house for their walkout lowers you below the minimum wage rate per hour, and that's against the law.
Here's a question from a bartender in Kendall. I work in a sports bar and my boss makes me buy Miami team jerseys to wear at work on game day. Is this allowed?
If you're a bartender and you're being forced to purchase uniforms to work for the sole benefit of the employer, then you need to be paid back for those uniforms. And the reason is because the cost of those uniforms cut into your hourly wage. And if you're paid less than the hourly wage, which is required by either federal or Florida law, then you need to be paid back for wearing those uniforms.
Here's a question from a waiter in Miami Beach who writes, our manager mandates that the servers in our restaurant tip out the cooks. Is this legal?
Generally speaking, that is not legal, and the reason that's not legal is because tips belong to the servers. They're the people who earn the tips, and they are the people who the tips have to remain with. You can have a valid tip pool, but cooks cannot be a member of that tip pool.
Lowell, here's a question from a bartender in Fort Lauderdale who writes, after our bar closes, we have to clock out before we do our closing side work if we are close to 40 hours during the week. Our boss says this is because we work too slow during the week. Is this allowed?
That's definitely not allowed. You have to be paid for all hours that you work, and your manager asking you to clock out and to continue working is against the law.
Lowell, here's a question from a busser in Coral Gables who writes, our restaurant makes us attend mandatory meetings but doesn't pay us. Is this allowed under Florida law?
Under Florida law, you must be paid for every hour that you work. Going to a mandatory meeting is considered work, and you must be paid for it. And even more importantly, you must be paid the full minimum wage, which is $7.93 an hour at a minimum.